Hey, Haley here. So I've been pulling fasteners for about 7 hours. I have most of the foredeck up. I still have a little strip over here on the side. So the original bronze screws, a lot of the time they just break when I try and pull them out anyways. So that means when we pull up the decking, it'll break the heads off anyways. So I really don't actually need to pull those up. And you can actually tell by looking at the deck where the original brass screws were and where the Robertson steel screws have been added, just based off the pattern. That was fun. Yeah, like I said, never done anything like this before, but the reason why I like this stuff is because it is giving me the opportunity to learn. I know like 1,000 times more about boat decking than I did even last week, but it's gonna be a lot of work over the next couple of days. All right, bye.
All right, well, Haley's done a lot of the fasteners here. The boat is cleaned out. We are ready to get down to real work here, and that calls ripping up some teak. So cue the time lapse. Let's get this stuff out of here. All right. Okay, the teak decks are up. We've got a good look at what's going on here. There's obviously some organic kind of rot material that's between the fiberglass and the teak deck. There's kind of in strips along the sides of the boat. It's interesting. But we can kind of see now better which sections of the deck are good and which are not. So the next step before we can peel up the glass is to get at all of the rest of the fasteners that are still stuck in here. So I've got to clean them out, drill them out, and do that about 500 times, and then we can get onto the glass. USB's 200 amp hour 12 volt battery. This is a $580 battery. It's one of the most affordable ones on the market. You're getting equivalent of 4 lead acid deep cycle batteries worth of capacity out of this thing, and you're getting it for less than you would spend on 4 lead acid batteries. Never mind the lifespan and the discharge rates. This guy right here is rated for 200 amps of discharge. It's a complete plastic monocoque design with a glued on seal at the top and epoxy set terminals. So that means it is completely waterproof. Now, I wouldn't go dunking this in the ocean, but it's nice to know while I have it on the boat that I don't have to worry about water ingress inside the battery under normal conditions. I want to go and test this thing for a temperature sensor. The literature that it came with stipulated 0 to 35 degrees Celsius operating temperatures, but didn't actually state whether it had shut off for temperatures or not. Now keep in mind, this battery, which I'm carrying now with one hand, is 4 times the capacity of a lead acid equivalent. So try doing that with 4 lead acid batteries. Okay, I wouldn't call this professional, and I share a freezer with a farmer, so it's absolutely stuffed to the gill with half a cow. I think it's really nice, but you gotta do a battery test. Get all these ground beef and steaks out of the way. Now we're gonna drop this in. Give it time to cool down. All right, the battery's cooling down. We've got it connected to a load in the form of a 12 volt old busted heater, and we'll see what happens. All right, it's been a while. It's still running the heater, so there is no low voltage disconnect for discharging. Neither is there for charging. It is now charging under freezing conditions. It also didn't state that it had a heating pad, but at the price, I would assume it did not. Now, touching this, you can hear that it is foam encapsulated. So that is at least a bit of insulation. And if the cold stint that you're putting the battery through or hot stint is short-lived, then maybe that insulation is going to be enough. Otherwise, I would really consider installing this in an application where it's not going to go beyond those temperatures for too long. And if it does go beyond those temperatures for too long, what you're going to want to make sure to do is not to have it charging or discharging at those extremes. So a separate manual shutoff would be adequate for most applications. They do stipulate a lot in the literature that this is an RV style battery, in which case I would put a mains shutoff for this battery whenever you were going to put the RV into storage for the winter time. That would make things a lot safer. I would also store this inside the cabin of the RV and not in an external housing because, well, you know, more exposure to the cold. That being said, really good bang for your buck, this battery, and the build quality is fine. I mean, the handles are not super premium, but the whole unit itself can be, I can pick this up with one hand. This is not very heavy at all. And for the capacity which I've tested, that's spectacular. So we're going to install this into Perry in an upcoming episode. But if you guys are interested in checking out Time USB's 200 amp hour battery and any of the other batteries they have for sale, please check out the link in the description. Thank you so much to Time USB for sponsoring this episode. And let's get back to our regular boat butchery mayhem. All right, the wind has not let up at all. It's still very, very loud in here. But we found some good plywood here. And you can see they used steel fasteners. Some of them stayed dry, some of them did not. But because this is good quality marine ply, it's kind of held up in most places. So there's a little bit of, I want to say, some water damage, but not rot in these seams here. So depending on what we find right there at the gunnels, this might actually be just glassed over entirely. It's certainly, as I suspected, much better towards amidships than it is out here at the gunnels. And then we got some other sections that are fully rotten. You can almost put a hammer through that. So we're going to be ripping up all that. The key to making this easy is to get yourself a nice right angle and try to match some other marine ply the same thickness, and also rabbet it in so that it slots into each other, back it properly, and we can just cut out a whole chunk and replace the whole chunk all at once, and then we can get back to glassing and sealing this thing up.
So if you look, you can see this is the clean surface that we've made. Simon is currently putting down the first layer of epoxy, and then it's like thinner, and then he's taking a thicker mixture and going over top and filling in all the screw holes, because there's a fucking shitload of screw holes here. It's like every 4 inches and then every 1.5 inches there's a screw hole, and we've had to pull up all those by hand, and then all the boards, and then we also have to pull this fiberglass.
Yeah.
So, and that's on 51 feet of deck by, what's this, 11 or 14 feet wide?
14 feet wide.
So obviously there's the pilot house and some hatches and stuff, so it's not like the whole area, but it's still a lot of work. But this is our first day of like real progress, which is really exciting.
We're officially moving forward, which is great instead of just demolition all the time. As you can tell, good sections and bad sections. We got some good section of deck here, so we squeegeed this all in, and then we got some rot here. We got rot closer to the gunnels. Basically, there's a lot of problem areas close to the gunnels. Seems to have really been an issue. And then where the water pools behind, like at the forward section of the mast, at the forward section of the hatch up there, yeah, that's where we're having issues. So we're definitely going to glass a little bit more heavily there and try to keep the water from pooling there in the future. But yeah, so far it's looking like well over 50% of the deck is in good condition. So we're hoping that it'll be about 80% of the deck, but we'll settle for 75. That would be nice. You know?
This spot looks nasty.
Yeah.
It's just wet.
There's a lot of moisture. Luckily, this is all really good quality marine hardwood ply, so it's stood the test of time. And although we pull it up and there was some moisture, like as you pull this up, that's dry there. You can see every screw hole had a little bit of moisture, but there's no rot there. So once it dries out, then we can epoxy and fill that in, and that's just good to go. But then over here we're getting areas where, can I borrow this for a second? Where it's quite a bit softer. So that is no good. But here, that's regular ply, so that's fine. So yeah, it's not so bad. That looks pretty good. That's a seam, so that's going to be the wettest for sure. Look at that!
It's a girl! I just delivered this from Jack over here. It's a prism?
It's a deck prism, and that has been the source of a massive amount of leaking into the galley. Well, I've just installed a new shower in our head. I don't want to think about that right now.
No, we don't have to. We'll just not talk about it. Cool.
Right on. Well, I'll do your job. You can do mine.
No, I'm good. I'm happy with my job now. I'm gonna have some coffee first though, and then I'll get...
I feel like a dentist. We're going into these beams and just fixing cavities basically, which is a good thing because it means that the beams are primarily in good shape. It's just a couple of cavities. We're not yanking the whole tooth out. So that's pretty good. Got lucky, happened to find a bunch of scrap yellow cedar lying around, so we laminated up a couple bits and shoved them in there. So that rot is now gone and sorted out. Our area is mostly prepped. Haley's on the prep. I'm on the cutting because I am now cutting a very expensive piece of plywood. This is a $168 sheet of plywood. And this is only half of it. So it's like $330, $340.
Quality, I feel like.
It smells kind of like cigars, eh?
I can't smell anything, so I smell cigarettes, so.
It's kind of like a cigar. Some fancy stuff. This seems like a good spot to end this episode. We've done the excavation, we've seen the problems with our own two eyes, we've ripped the teak deck up, and now we know what we're really getting into. There's quite a bit of rot, and there's some structural stuff that we really have to address before we can start building this boat back up. Barry's finally back. Look at him. Sticks out like a sore thumb. And now's a great time to go pick up Barry from the airport. He's finally back from his sailing trip. I can't believe you got look through the border looking like that. You look like a fucking drug dealer. Break it apart. It's disgusting.
Sailor dude ever.
Get a boat. So while these two get back to work, I'm heading to Silva to make some money to pay for all of this. Speaking of making money, thank you so much to Time USB for sponsoring this episode. If you guys are interested in checking out a budget-friendly lithium iron phosphate battery, the link is in the description as always. Thank you so much to Time USB for sponsoring this episode, and thank you guys for watching. See you next time.